little details. That the best way to approach this is by answering the big questions first and narrowing it down so you're not getting the details until you've got everything else figured out, and then context answers all the questions for you. So the process that I'm going to recommend, it absolutely can work within the barbershop style, but it also can work in any style of music, or combinations and hybrids of styles. It's not a stylistic style, it's basically a process. But before I get started, how many of you have never arranged before that are sitting here right now? Okay, great, because this will absolutely help you. And the most important thing to know about arranging is, for you guys who've never arranged before, your brains, your ears are filled with decades of vocal harmony. Your instincts are finally home. So you'll be able to follow those instincts as you're going through the whole process. And then with a little bit of theory, and a little bit of process, and a little bit of trial and error, you will absolutely be able to arrange. That's, you're going to be able to get there. And how many of you guys would consider yourself new-ish arrangers? You've arranged a little bit, but you're kind of getting involved in. Great, great. Do we have anybody who's super experienced here? Okay. Yes. Well, this hopefully will still be interesting and useful to you guys because it'll give you new ways to think about it and approach an arrangement if you're getting stuck, if you find yourselves in the glue, as it were. So the way I like to work these seminars also is, I don't want this to just be me talking. This isn't just a monologue, it's a dialogue. And if I say something that you don't understand, please ask right away. If I say something you don't agree with, great. Or like, is that really what you meant? Or whatever, so we can make this happen. We have time to end up spinning this whole thing out and really getting into the details. Schedule here, we are good until 10:45. We've got plenty of time. 10 minutes, get this done in an hour, 15 minutes, or whatever, so lots of time to get started. Any questions before we get started about this? All right, so 10 steps. Oh, and also I should say, this is, first of all, it's really kind of the first chapter, the first section of my book, Acapella Arranging, in case you're curious. And different concepts are dealt with from there, but we'll go into detail and come up with other ideas and topics and stuff. It's not that one, the Art of Vocal Harmony, it's the book just called Acapella Arranging. No one had a book called that, so. Is that it? Oh, there it is. Available here? Yes. Available here, great. So.
That's right, what, the line was long.
Huh?
The line was long, that's why I'm late to get your book.
Oh, good luck, let's go. So let's start, as Maria von Traum used to say from the very beginning. When you're arranging, the process of arranging doesn't start when you first put pen to paper. When you're choosing what to do with your arrangement, you have a major decision right up front. And that's step number one. Choosing a song. What song should you choose? So, let's talk about that. Give me some things. What are some considerations that you should have in your mind when choosing a song? Go.
Something contemporary.
It can be. Well, so to put it in a broader context, perhaps the concept is something that your group needs. You're filling a need within your set. You've got a lot of older music, you need something really current. Because you don't have to arrange something contemporary. You could be singing Amazing Grace. Like but that specific topic, making sure that the song that you choose fills a need within your group is absolutely important. Yeah.
It has to grab something, either the rhythm line or tell me something.
It really should. It really should. Did you guys hear that? It has to grab. She said it has to grab you. And the reason this is important is because you are creating something from this song. So you want the song to inspire you in some way. Maybe you'll have a big idea of what you want to do with the song right out of the way, or maybe there's just something you like about it in particular. And here's something to know. For those of you guys who are arranging a song that maybe isn't your favorite, whatever, the act of arranging is to play up the elements that you really love and think will work well for your group, and play down the things that don't work as well. And you'll be able to change the form, you'll be able to change the key, the style, the tempo, the mood, the backing harmonies, all kinds of stuff. You can change a song so much in an arrangement that you barely can tell what it originally was. So long as you find something in that song that draws you in, and it could be a lyric, it could be a melodic figure, it could be something about the group, then you have something to sink your teeth into. Yes?
Who's going to sing it?
Who's going to sing it? Now, if you're talking about a group from the choir and it's going to be a soloist in front, if you're going to sing a song by you too, you either need to have someone who can sing if it's a guy's group up to that high bottom tenor range, or you need to know that you're going to change the song in a way that's going to fit that individual. Or if your whole group is going to end up singing the song, does it fit that aspect of your group? And this is a good point for me to bring one of the major elements of arranging that I recommend all of you guys do. If you walk away with nothing else from this seminar, it's this concept. Bring the song to the group. Don't bring your group to the song. This was my mantra on all 5 seasons of the sing-off here in the US and all the way around. What I mean by this is, if Pentatonics is going to do a version of O Holy Night, you don't have them try to copy the canonical version of O Holy Night. You're wasting your time and energy. What you're going to do is you're going to take O Holy Night and you're going to try to find a way to make it fit the sound and the style and the personality of Pentatonics, or your chorus, or your quartet, or whatever the group is. Because everybody's already heard the original versions of the songs. There's nothing special there. There's nothing unique. There's nothing compelling, right? All you're going to do is make them turn around and go out and buy the original version. Now, there are times when you can, oh, I really like the Dean Martin version of Sleigh Bells Ring. So you're going to kind of play on that. But ultimately, you don't want to entirely copy it. Maybe when you're arranging for the first time, you want to do kind of a vocal translation because you're getting used to the whole process. But ultimately, in time, you want to be taking that, even if it's the Dean Martin version, and making it your group's version. There's something about it that fits your group better. And this gets to the concept of custom tailoring. The greatest value, and I'm glad you guys are in this room right now, the reason I wrote the acapella arranging book, the reason I talk about this, is for 10, 15 years, I had a virtual monopoly on arranging this style of music, contemporary acapella. I don't want that. The best clothing is custom tailoring, not off the rack. And more importantly, if I'm not in a rehearsal room and I can't continue to change and tweak a piece of my arranging, it's not going to fit as well as somebody who's in that room. So I tell people all the time, change my arrangements, please. I would change them if I were there. And I urge you to change anybody else's arrangements too. Because the arrangement doesn't matter. An arrangement is only a roadmap to get a group of singers to connect with an audience. Does that make sense? The notes on the page are meaningless. They're not music. And this is something that's arranged that you really want to wrap your head around. Because you get caught up in it, and you feel like this is this thing I've created, this, but this actually doesn't matter. This isn't the point. This is the point. That connection, that moment that you create in the room. And if you think about it, if you're using a piece of, a map from AAA, or you're using Google Maps, if you're driving and then there's congestion on the freeway and you know a quick way around, you go off the map, right? You change it. It should be exactly the same way with arrangements. So just know for yourselves, and we'll talk about this as really the last step, you want to have built into your process the ability to continue to change and morph and custom tailor and take in the sleeves a little, et cetera, until the arrangement fits your group just right. Make sense? Okay, cool. Other things that you should consider when you're first choosing a song for your group. Yeah?
Do enough different things happen to keep the audience occupied? Like, is it one chord and 2 notes? And big spaces?
That's a good broad point. You guys know when you get a massage, when someone starts to show it feels really nice, and then if they keep doing the exact same thing after a little while, you don't feel like it just becomes the new normal. And then if they keep doing it, it starts to hurt. It's kind of annoying. We as humans, in all endeavors, have a threshold for change. If things change too often, it makes us move like it's crazy. Like there's probably some jazz that's just so free or so atonal, whatever. You're just like, there's too much information. It's changing too often. But if there's a piece of music that is incredibly repetitive, it has one chord, it just keeps cycling. A lot of current pop music, same 4-chord pattern, and the same, and the same, and the same. You're kind of lulled into not being interested in it. So what you want to hit as an arranger is that sweet spot of the right amount of variety, the right amount of change. Does that make sense? This is a big concept, but it's good that you brought that up. And something well, we'll talk about it in form a little bit in a moment as well, but that's absolutely right. You want to make sure that there's enough there. Because you can also reharmonize them, you can make them change, but the song still needs to have a good.
I don't understand bringing a song to the group and the group to the song. I'm sorry, I missed
Okay, here's an example. If
Can you repeat the question?
yeah, sure. Her question was, I don't understand your concept of bringing the group to the song, or bringing the song to the group. So let's talk generally about the idea of having a voice or having a sound, right? When James Taylor sings anything, he sounds like James Taylor doing that song. And if James Taylor was going to sing, Slay Down Me, like you can even hear it in your head, he would do it the James Taylor way and it would sound like James Taylor. He wouldn't copy Dean Martin. And Dean Martin wouldn't copy Ella Fitzgerald. They have their own character. And the reason you love hearing them is because you're hearing them do their version of a classic song. Or a Holy Night, or Happy Birthday. Happy Birthday. Like if Dean Martin's gonna sing it, right? You know because they have so much character. Every group has its own character. So when you're arranging, you really want to kind of know what your group's character is and emphasize that. So take a song and make it fit your group in their way, rather than taking your group and trying to make it fit the song. Does that help? You guys get what I'm talking about? Yeah. And if a group is new, you don't really know what the group's sound or style is, but that's what we'll talk about in the developing your style, the last thing. And ultimately, it can change, and you're still exploring, and sometimes when you're arranging, you're testing the waters, as it were. Can our group kind of have a little bit of a calypso feel? Does it work for our group to sing just a really open, plaintive ballad? And more importantly, who are we on stage? How does the audience perceive us and all that? Those things all kind of play in. But ultimately, as a ranger, you want to make sure that you're making something for your group rather than making something and telling your group, sing these notes, they're going to be really awesome. And that gets to a bigger picture concept. As arrangers, sorry to tell you this, you don't matter. You're not the point. I think it's actually pretty selfish when an arranger makes choices in an arrangement that draw attention to themselves. Ooh, look at these cool chords, look at this stuff I've done. It's not the point of music. What you want to have happen is you want a group to get lost in the moment. You want the group to be expressing so purely that they're not thinking about the arrangement, they're just expressing. And you want an audience to be swept away in the moment, so much so that they even forget what's going on where they are. So when I did the arrangements for In Transit, for me the best compliment I could get, and I was lucky enough to hear this periodically, was I forgot that it was a cappella. I forgot that we were sitting here seeing this first show on Broadway ever that's all vocal. The beginning started, it was like, okay, this is the a cappella, I'm really excited. And then at the end, the lights came up. At the end, they were like, oh, I love that show. And wait, that was all voices the whole time. And it was very much intentional by me. I never wanted to be showy. I never wanted to be like, look at what we're doing right now. Because although, and we can talk more about this at the end, a lot of the barbershop style is focused on trying to get judges to give you high scores. But that isn't how people perceive music, and they don't care about that. So the more you're making choices as an arranger to say, like, look at me, look at me, look at me, you have the potential of potentially pushing away an audience that just wants to be drowning in a moment, lost in a song. So, and I realize that ideally you want to be able to do both. But if you're doing it, make those moments as much as you possibly can about the music, about the singers, about the expression that they're having, such that only 1 out of 10 people in the audience ever goes like, ooh, I wonder who picked those notes. Because a lot of people don't even know what arranging is, right? I wonder who, that was a cool version they did. Like a lot, that's going to be high praise for you from people who don't even know that an arranger exists. A lot of time on a sing-off, pitch perfect. Like, people don't even know. They just figure like, well, they're really good singers, so they got it when they sang it, and that was the way they sang it. Right? And it makes sense to some extent, because if you think about it, a garage band, they just pick up their guitars and they just start playing Louie Louie. And the guitarist says, like, the Rolling Stones probably don't sit down and think like, well, let's see, Keith is going to do this little riff so that the bass should make sure that, like, they don't have to, they just know what they're doing. And frankly, that's what acapella was for most of human history. You'd listen, you'd woodshed, you'd come up with some cool harmonies, you were done. But now acapella's gotten so complex, and we have so many different people singing it, particularly in the big choral setting, we have to kind of decide who's going to do what when. But never make that the point. Never say, like, look at me, because then you've lost that magic of the communication with the audience, and it's a bit of a bad project. Okay, any other things to think about when choosing a song? Yes?
What if they're your own?
If you wrote the song yourself?
Yeah.
Well then, all of the rest of these steps, but I would say if you're going to arrange a song that you've written yourself, you want to try to take yourself out of songwriting mode and put yourself entirely into arranging mode. And think entirely about how you can take the song down and make it work for these singers, rather than, well, what I really wanted in my song was the soprano to go up here, but what if the soprano doesn't go up there? And this is something else, you guys are thinking big picture, which is beautiful, but you also want to think about, like, what's the range of the lead vocal? And all of the different aspects of music, the vocal range of the song, the harmonic complexity, the tempo and the key, all of these things matter to the extent that either they need to work where they are, or you need to be able to change them to make them work for what you're doing, or you need to let it go. For instance, like what do I mean by that? For instance, think about the song Under Pressure by David Bowie and Queen. Great song, right? So particularly if you're arranging for all women's voices, you don't have an enormous vocal range to work with all the time. Sometimes if it's a younger group, if it's a newer group, you've got a bit of a less of a range, particularly for young women's voices. They don't have these crazy, awesome female basses that, because women's voices develop until age 35, age 40, and they drop and they get rich and mature. And so what are you going to do with that smaller range? Well, a couple things you should remember is, number one, Billie Holiday only had like a minor ninth she was working with. A lot of great singers, particularly as they get older, they don't have that much range. It's what you do with it. And nobody thinks like, well, Billie Holiday, I mean, she was okay, but she didn't have a 4-octave range like Mariah, so she's clearly not as good, right? Both actually had their drum party. So there's, I'm thinking about it now. We're off topic, but bottom line, and also something else to think about, particularly if you're arranging in the contemporary acapella style, generally speaking, women aren't heard in pop music singing way up in their head voice. It sounds choral, it sounds operatic, it kind of takes you away. So a lot of the time when I'm arranging for an all-women's group that is a college acapella group, and they want to do a really current pop song, and you don't want them to sound like this, they're never going to really be up above their breaker. If they are, it's one quick little descant line, but they're not singing melodic things way up in their head voice. It's not part of the sound that we're used to. So that really limits yourself right there. So, Under Pressure, why does this matter? Well, the beginning of the song is that is a signature bass line. Without that bass line, either you're reimagining the entire song, or it's gone. Now, think about the vocal range and the lead vocal range and where your women are going to be able to sing. You can't do the song's bass line. It's going to sound weird, right? But as you would often do in a song, you might take the low note and pop it up an octave, which often will work. It's not a problem. Just take your bass line. But you can't start the song. Right? That's a deal breaker. So there will be times when songs will get you into that kind of bind, that conundrum, like, So you've got to figure that stuff out probably before you go too deep into the piece of music. And for those of you who are new arrangers, you're probably like, how would I even identify this kind of main lines? They're not that common. I wouldn't really worry about it right now. But over time, you'll learn and see, like, okay, these elements are going to potentially create an issue with this. Any other thoughts on this first step? We spent a lot of time on the first step, but I wanted to spend a lot of time on the first step because the first step really matters, right? Picking that song is a tenth of your arrangement process. Making sure it fits your group or will fit your group, making sure you love it, you have a way into it and everything like that. So, step number 2, listen to the original song over and over and over again. Now, why? Well, a few different reasons. Number 1, you want that song inside of your head. You want to be able to press play in your brain, maybe not for the whole song, but for instance, like, if I say Hey Jude by the Beatles, just close your eyes for a second and see if you can hear the top of the song. You can, right? You're probably going, Hey Jude. It's right there for you, right? If you were arranging a song you barely knew or whatever and you don't have that access to it, first of all, you're going to be going back to the original recording every other note. You know, you'll be like, okay, let's write it. Hey, freeze, pause, go back. Jude, okay, great. Don't make, pause. Don't make, right? But you want to have don't make it bad. Like you want those lines in your head. And more importantly, the more you listen to the original, the more you'll hear the stuff. Put your headphones on, you'll hear like, oh, I didn't notice that before. Those things going on in the background. And this isn't about you transcribing it. It's about making sure that you really know it. It's yours, and it's in your brain. Not because you're copying it, but because that's the first step to really getting a piece going. And moreover, let's take this one step further. If the song has been done by many people, listen to multiple versions of it, right? Because here's what you're going to find. When you hear different versions of a song, you're going to say like, oh, this is what it sounds like when it's sped up. This is what it sounds like in a different key. This is, particularly for you new arrangers, this is what it sounds like with a different feel. This is what it sounds like when it's sung by a man as opposed to a woman, or this is what it sounds like when they get rid of the bridge, or they trim down the intro, or all that kind of stuff. You'll start getting a lot of different information, and you will find the issue of like, make sure there's something you love. You're like, oh, I love the way this verse is happening. I love this thing they did with this descant thing up here. It's not in the original, but, and here's where you're gonna start feeling guilty, right? You're gonna feel like, oh, well, but, I mean, I didn't come up with that. Some other arranger came up with that thing. Well, I just want you to remember what Stravinsky said. And he was talking about composers, not arrangers, but it's the same thing. Good composers borrow. Great composers steal. And in fact, you can hear Stravinsky music, because he's one of the greatest 20th century composers. You hear Stravinsky stuff and you swear you're listening to Debussy. Like I've heard a piece of music and I'm like, ooh, that's not Stravinsky. But he was exercising these muscles and learning and going deep into the music that happened around him. Nobody, I don't know if you realize this, but according to copyright law in the US at least, you don't own your arrangement. Sounds crazy, but if you arrange an Elton John song, technically he owns it, which is stupid, but that's the way the law works. So you shouldn't feel bad about taking different elements of other people's arrangements, because you don't own it anyway, they don't own it. It's all going back to the original piece of music. And ultimately, if you start playing that game, you'll be down a rabbit hole of like, well, he did this, so if I change this couple of this, no, just take, make it awesome. Because that's what Elton wants you to do anyway, right? That's what everybody wants you to do. Make it awesome, nobody cares. Nobody cares if you straight up steal. And you may be feeling that way about like other barbershoppers arrangements, people know this thing here, whatever. Call it a quote, call it an homage. To call yours a rearrangement of this other person's version. No, I don't mean it in a bad way. Who cares? What matters is the group and the audience. And put their name on the top of it. Say, arranged by, inspired by. Or say it's a rearrangement of this person's arrangement of the song. Like, and I feel like you can't do that. You can't copy my version. Why not? It's music. For most of human history, nobody owned anything, right? And copyright law and patent law is important, but our country has gone way over the deep end. Way over the deep end, right? And I'll be honest with you, because we have a little extra time in the seminar, the entirety of contemporary acapella wouldn't exist if the letter of the law was being followed at all times. And I have a deep respect for the barbershop community in general, so Adelines International. You guys clear all your arrangements and da-da-da-da. That's a lot easier with Gershwin than it is with Ariana Grande.
Right.
Because here's the bottom line, as an arranger, first of all, modern pop songs are often written by 9 people, because they get different people in the studio, and they all win, and I own 13%, and they own 7%, and blah, 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 blah. Clearing, getting the legal rights to do these really current songs often is functionally impossible, because the amount of money that they will get from you doesn't equal 1 hour of a lawyer's time chasing the paperwork, responding to you, so they'll often not even reply. Plus, you've got a couple of big companies like Hal Leonard and Alfred that buy up the vocal music rights to things, and it's of no value to them to have it be all these different versions of it. Or their staffs are being reduced because everybody's copying music now anyway, so they've got fewer and fewer people, and they're like, my inbox is filled with people, I can't even do this, which is why things keep changing now for Straight Adelines and Barbershop Harmony Society and clearing songs. It just got a whole bunch harder and more complex and frustrating, right? And expensive. So it's like, what are you supposed to do? So, first of all, just know that ultimately, music is music, and we need to make music on this planet. Number 2, the songwriters themselves, Ariana Grande, she doesn't want you to not sing the song. The system wasn't set up to constrain people. And like I said, the entirety of contemporary acapella would not exist if every college group and every high school group and every young group waited until the song cleared, because 10% of them maybe would clear, and they cleared 9 months afterwards. And in your eyes, what would have happened? Right? Peter Gabriel, he wouldn't have written back, and if he did write back, he'd be tweaky and say, well, let me see it first, and da 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 da. And by then, the song's off the charts and the whole moment's gone, right? So, there are complex and interesting ways around all this. We can talk about it offline or whatever. I'm not saying intentionally break the law all the time. I'm saying, I'm not. I'm saying do everything you can within the law to be correct and right and upstanding. And if it is impossible for you to make music without following the law, then there's something wrong with the law. And ultimately, you guys probably don't get too caught up in the jaywalk, right? Probably, I'll bet you break 10 laws a day. Yeah.
About listening to other versions of the song,
Yeah.
I always feel like I don't want to arrange somebody else's arrangement. I want to arrange the song. So for me, it's always important to listen to the original and really get that in my head. And you're saying that listening to other versions should be a big part of the process.
I think it's really valuable.
Yeah.
And here's also why. Because other versions of the song are sometimes going to suck. They're going to be terrible. And you're going to learn, ooh, I wouldn't want to do that. Like, oh, this song does not work with a reggae feel, so that idea is dead. and honestly, there are times when a cover version of a song is so good and so inspiring. For me, I think probably the greatest cover version of any song ever, in pop music at least, is the Joe Cocker version of A Little Help with My Friends.
Oh, yeah.
So, the original Little Help with My Friends from the Beatles on Sgt. Pepper's, what would you do if I sang out a tune? It's perfect. It's perfect. I love it. It comes right out of the song. The Billy Shears, right? And then like, it's charming and wonderful, and it's just an incredible piece of pop writing. And then Joe Cocker.
Yeah.
And then have a little help. And then you're like, it's somehow even better.
Right.
It's somehow even better. That's what an arrangement can do. You find your way into the song, into the meaning, and you feel that connection, and the soul sisters in the back singing those chords and all that kind of stuff. And one of my favorite songs we ever did as an opening number on the sing-off was that, A Little Help from My Friends. And it's based more on the Joe Cocker version, of course. Very much based on that, but having all of these singers and having it be a cappella and feeling that connection between them is so great and so powerful. So, yes, it shows you both what you can do and what you can't do. And especially if you're arranging for the first time, it's just nice to wrap your head around lots. Now, you can't listen to all of them. Songs like Yesterday and Blackbird, like some huge classic songs. Like you go on iTunes and there's 300, 400. But the nice thing is you can just go through preview and click, 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 or if you use Spotify or Pandora or something like that, you can hop around and hear different versions of that same song. Okay.
I like listening to lots of different, like pop and that kind of like commercial versions of a song, but I find if I listen to a barbershop version of the song, and I've got a fairly good memory, I find that all of a sudden what I'm putting down on paper is somebody else's barbershop version.
Yeah, okay, so then that's a good reason not to do that.
Yeah.
Because you do want to leave enough space for yourself.
Yeah.
It'd be like, oh, I want to write an essay on toast. Don't go read a bunch of other people's essays specifically about toast, because then you're going to be like, oh, well, they already said this thing about not having it up too high and burning it, so I don't want to write about that. Like, and then you're spending all of your time creating a space around everything else that's already existed in that really narrow field. So I get that. So yeah, okay, good. Everything that I suggest, by the way, there will be reasons not to do. And here's something for you guys also to know as arrangers. Yes, there's physics in music, but the entirety of the Western tuning system is compromised and imperfect, right? We know this.
Yes.
And this isn't math, it's not science, it's art. Oh, we're not supposed to have parallel fifths, except parallel fifths exist throughout all kinds of music, and doo-wop and whatever, so parallel fifths aren't a problem. When you're doing that 17th, 18th century 4-part writing, the reason you don't want to have parallel fifths is you lose a voice, but sometimes you want everybody to just slide up from a 4 to 5 chord. So rules are good to know and understand, and then understanding why you would break them in different places, et cetera, et cetera. So nothing is never, right? And I can sit up here and like give this whole talk and then turn around and just punch holes in the, except, ooh, but not that, and don't do these things and all that. So yes, good. If anything that I'm suggesting feels wrong or doesn't work for you, don't do it. All right, step number 3. We've already talked about cheating, right? Step number 3, you're gonna feel really dirty. Buy the sheet music. Download a MIDI file of the original version. Now, MIDI files in particular are really, really helpful and useful right now. You can go, there's a great website called musicrobot.com. It's a free website, and it's kind of a conglomerate of all kinds of free MIDI versions of songs that have been uploaded. So if you go to MIDIrobot.com and you type in Blackbird, you'll end up with like, oh, there are 117 different MIDI files that are Blackbird. For those of you who are not familiar, a MIDI file is a musical language in which the notes and the chords exist. It's all been put in there, and you can take it and import it into a sheet music program. For those of you who want to get a really current song, it's not going to be up on Music Robot because that's older songs, Hotel California or whatever. You want the latest Ariana Grande song, Dangerous Woman or whatever, you're probably going to have to pay for it. Good news is, it's $9, it's $10. And if you type in Ariana Grande, and then the title of the song, and then MIDI, M-I-D-I, or put that at the beginning for Google, then you'll end up getting websites like Band Tracks and MIDI hits, and there are other like full, and some are in Australia. They're companies that end up creating really full, well done MIDI files so that people can use them for karaoke, or they can put them in a computer and trigger everything in a Ramada in so they can sing that song on a Friday night with their keyboard and their drum machine and them playing guitar and whatever, right? Why would you do this? Because why not? Nobody cares. The act of arranging is not this like, I'm a lone man on a hill with a sword and I must fight the dragon. Or woman, or anybody. The point of arranging is to make the audience connect with the singers and the singers connect with the audience. If there are shortcuts, take them and don't look back. The reason you want to have a MIDI file in there is you're going to have the melody, you're going to have the chords, you're going to have what some of the instruments do. And your arrangement will actually be less like drawing, if that makes sense, or painting where you're putting things on a blank canvas. And to some extent, it'll be almost like sculpture where you're carving away things before you put more things back on there. But that's okay. It'll save you an incredible amount of time. And sheet music can work well as well if you're arranging by hand, although I highly recommend a notation program of some kind because it's really easy to make changes. Ooh, the whole song's a half step too low. Click, now I'm in the right key. Handwritten, ooh, I'll give me 2 days, you have to write the whole thing out again. And little changes and little tweaks are so easy to make. Plus you can play things back. You can create MIDI files of your own that you send out to your singers that they can listen to and learn from. So you don't necessarily have to have somebody sing all the parts for everybody. Lots of reasons to make this work. All make sense?
Yes.
And this is also, you may find other arrangements of the song, and so long as it doesn't get you lost in the weeds, you can check those out as well. There are a bunch of different websites up online where if you put in the word acapella arrangement or whatever, you want to do a version of Don't Stop Me Now by Queen, you're going to find a lot of different versions up online. And in fact, there's, on the good, happy, legal side of things, there's a new program through sheetmusicplus.com that Helen has set up called Arrange Me. And they've taken about 1,000 pop songs, and they said, you can do acapella arrangements of these legally, and more importantly, you upload the song there, and you can sell them and make money on it. So you can also upload any public domain or original piece of music there, but for these, Arrange Me. So it's sheetmusicplus.com, and the program's called Arrange Me. And once they start this program, I've uploaded like 175 songs to this thing, because I'm like, let's do it, people! Because I've reached over 2,000 songs, I've just been sitting on my computer because I can't put them on a website and be like, buy these or whatever, because I don't want to get a phone call or a legal letter, right? But they exist. So, and they have, I think, Don't Stop Me Now, and they have Don't Stop Believing, and they don't have everything, but there's a lot up there. And so that's a really good way to do legal versions of it. And here's what you do is, they don't allow choral versions of things, but they don't think of acapella as being choral music. They think of it as being a small ensemble. So what you do is, when you're choosing, I think it's a minimum price of $12.99 for as many copies as a group needs. You click on small ensemble, and then in the little tagline you can write acapella. And you also click, SSAA or whatever, and when you're filling out the little form, and then you upload your PDF, and then you can sell it. And you can make it $40, $50, $100. You can make it any amount you want. It just can't be less than $12.99. I'm pretty cheap date, so I make it all on $12.99 because I just want to get people saying. But it's a really great way to legally publish pop music that you can get out there in the world. Yeah.
Do you get a commission on each one of those? Or
Yeah, you do. You
how are
get
paid?
somewhere between 10 and 20% of each sale, and they send you, they'll send you a check or whatever each month. So yeah, you do. It's a nice, depending upon how many people buy it. But people only buy one copy for their whole group. So but then make it $150 if you're like, well, not that many people are going to do it, but then the people who really want it, they'll pay that money. Then make that amount of money. It's okay. Because let me tell you what happens in my world. I know what happens in your world. In my world, people buy one copy and they Xerox the whole group. I don't think at any point in the past 10 years I've gone to work with any choir anywhere around the world on my own music, and everybody's been holding legal copies of everything. We do?
We do.
Well, I need to hang out with you guys more.
Yes.
No, I know you guys do. That's a beautiful thing about this community, but what I'm saying is within the pop music world, and particularly the younger singers, younger choral directors, they grew up with Napster later. They're used to music as a free commodity. You know this. This is all part of what the music industry is, and that's where things are going. And that's why Hal Leonard is cutting the staff. And then they don't have the money to be able to help you guys do legal, which is this crazy bind they're in, right? Anyway, blah, blah, blah. You get it. So get copies of the sheet music, get MIDI files, all that kind of stuff. Anything you can find to make your job easier. Next up, step number 4, decide on a form. So what does that mean? Well, what we're doing is we're taking and making big decisions and whittling them down smaller and smaller. And the next big picture decision you really need to decide is, what are we going to do? We're going to do intro, verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, chorus, chorus? Or are we getting rid of the intro and just doing verse, chorus, verse? You see what I'm saying? Like that kind of a general problem. And you can change your mind later on, but you kind of want to know what you're doing. And here's where I'm going to place in your minds one of the key things about a cappella that I think, and I mean barbershop, all of it, that's different from generally instrumental music and pop. When you go to see U2 performing, with or without you, whatever, any song they're doing, their versions are like 4.5 minutes long. And when you're driving in the car and you're listening to it, you're focused in and out and in and out. Or if they're performing it on stage, they have giant screens, they've got all kinds of graphics going on, they've got giant flame pots going on. Like there's all this information, all these visual things that are going on that make it larger than life. and the audience is waving, and so their 4-minute version is keeping people's attention, not just groove on. A cappella is perhaps the most demanding form when it comes to audience attention. What do I mean by that? Not that it's harder, but just that when there's nothing but a couple people or a few people up on stage singing, and there's no graphics or whatever, you really, like you're sitting right there, you really need to focus on them in a way that people are not used to focusing during music, right? When you're, like I said, you're driving, you're listening to it, you're kind of coming back in and out of chorus, something along, and I'm saying, oh, it's the last chorus of the song's done. You lost 2 minutes of it, you weren't really paying attention. That's an awkward experience when an audience is right there and the singers are right here. So since it's also more compelling, but it's more demanding, a 4-minute song on the radio feels better and works better when it's 2.5 minutes long, right? When you trim the fat off. So maybe there's no intro. Maybe your intro is just 2 measures or 4 measures rather than 8 or 16, right? Maybe you don't have 3 choruses at the end unless something different is happening. Maybe if there's a 3rd and a 4th verse, you don't do all of them. Take and make the experience for your audience dense and complete, but always compelling. So they don't shift and lose attention, because then your singers drift into autopilot. And autopilot is your enemy. You do not want that. You want your singers to be fully engaged every single minute. And do I see Tom back there? Hey, Tom. Hey, so Tom's entire choral charisma method is absolutely inspiring and fantastic, and is the single biggest inspiration for what I put into my book, The Heart of Vocal Harmony. The two of us are like blood brothers when it comes to the concept of emotion being predominant and the focus of musical expression. And you need to make sure that your singers are able to go on an emotional journey, go on an expressive journey when they're performing, and they cannot do that if they're bored. They cannot do that if there's too much repetition in a piece of music. They can't do that if they're tuning out. So this decision of what the form is may feel like, oh, well, that's just, no. It's absolutely crucial to the process of focused emotional expression, right? Also by Thomas.
Did you say art or heart?
Heart. My book, Heart of Vocal Harmony. And his is choral charisma, and it's amazing. So, once you've kind of got a sense of what the form is going to be, step number 5, you may be thinking like, we're halfway through this and we haven't even started putting notes down. What you want to do is you want to lay out your paper or your computer file, if you're going to be importing things into it. So, you've got your form, so then you're like, okay, 2 measures, draw double bar lines, next thing. Or if you're using the MIDI file, you're going to import the piece of music, and you're going to chop it down so that, like, got rid of this last piece, we're not using the bridge, intro's gone, so that it fits that form. It's sheet music, 2 measures, intro, 4 measures, or 8 measures first verse, whatever, boom, 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 so that you've got this map. Why is that valuable? Well, in the case of a MIDI file, you need to know and get the ball rolling, and on a piece of paper, that allows you to jump from place to place really easily, right? You've made, and also these decisions that you've been making, for those of you who are new arrangers, not a single one of them scare you, right? You're like, I can do that. I can count to 8. Dancers can count to 8. We can count to 8, right? Like it's pretty simple. They can't count to 9, by the way. So make sure you guys when you get the choreographers to come, so they're like, and they just go up to 8 and then keeps, and they're always like, how many counts of 8? I'm like, I know how many measures. Anyway, it's good to know other languages, right? We study languages in school, speak choreography, speak 8. So, and you can also, at that point, kind of decide, if you're going to be doing 4-part writing, you put out four different lines. I know the way it's written in your music is 2 on a line, 2 on a line. I definitely recommend, particularly if you're arranging for the first time, to put them on 4 different lines. So you don't have to keep switching to like layer 1, layer 2, so the stems and blah, 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 blah. You can compress them all together later if you want. But it's tough to arrange with everything in this dense little space. Give yourself a little room to play. Make sense? All right. Step number 6. This is a big step, guys. Right at the solo. Yay! Put the melody in. It's going to be on the lead line. Put your melody through the lead line. If you know that the bass is going to be doing these 2 lines, drop it down, put in the bass, maybe it drops by an octave, whatever. But put the melody in everywhere. Again, we're up to step number 6. You haven't done anything you can't arrange, right? None of this is crazy yet. Why do that? Because everything exists around the melody. And you want to know exactly what's going to be happening when, where, because that's going to help you figure out what needs to be learned. Everything clear so far? Right? Step number 7, any guesses? Right out the bass line, yes! You guys didn't even need to be here today. You could be sitting out in the sun. Rain. Steam room, yes, exactly. Now, you're going to change the bass line. There are going to be times where you need to tweak things, but basically you know you need the roots of the chords. And the bass line may be largely homophonic, which is the core of what's going on in Sweet Adelines and barbershop style. But if it's a pop song, it may be, you're doing a crazy little thing called like whatever it is. And you may later, instead of going you may end up changing it to so nothing is permanent. Don't write in ink, but put those pieces in. And actually, a good arrangement is one that you could hear just the melody and the bass, and it would work, right? I mean, ideally, because you've got the roots of the chords, and you've got the melodic structure, and the two will give you a sense of the song, the main parts of the song. And in fact, when you're talking about a Bach chorale, the melody is in the soprano part, right? It's up top, because our ear gravitates to the highest part automatically, which is why the melody's up there. And the bass line is the other melody, which is why tenors are jumping around all the time and all says, you are singing the same note and you come over back here again, right? In a Bach chorale, because these upper and lower parts are the two melodies that your ear is hearing, the contrary motion, and that's the interesting step. And then in the middle, tenors and altos are filling in the rest of the gaps. Those melodies matter. Yes?
In order to put in a bass line, where are you getting your basic chordal harmonies to create that bass line? Are you stealing it from the piano arrangement?
Oh, okay, so you bring up a good point. Yeah, I guess when you're arranging barbershop, you guys are reharmonizing a piece of music so much and putting in like, oh, let's just cram some circle of fifths changes in here because that's what we do. Oh, I have 4/8 notes? Well, let's cut them down to 16ths and we can go all the way around the circle, yes. Too deep, was that? I got Yankees if anybody's So maybe, if you have to ask that question, maybe that's not the way to start arranging. You should start an arrangement. You heard original barbershop, it was triads. And here's something else you need to know. And we can talk more about this offline, but nobody in the audience, unless you're like a super music nerd like myself, nobody cares if the chords have sevens. Nobody cares about the circle of fifths. That's not a thing. Nobody goes home at the end of a long day and says, I've had the worst day. I just need to put on a piece of music that makes it around the circle of fifths twice. In the same way, and this is something Tom and I are talking about all the time, nobody goes home at the end of a long day and says, I just need to listen to the most in-tune piece of music I own. Except us, right? No, I said that. Right? But the world listens to music because it makes them feel a certain way. So as arrangers, I highly recommend, if you're not used to arranging, you focus on creating a piece of music that's going to make the audience feel joy, or sadness, melancholy, or the strength and power of rock and roll, whatever it is. That's your thesis. Your thesis never should be half diminished chords. That's not a thing. It's like, that's grammar, but your speech can't be about grammar or pronunciation, right? Martin Luther King Jr. was not up there at the mall thinking about, I have a dream, like this whole speech has to be perfectly grammatically correct. No. And when you hear preachers, sometimes they aren't grammatically correct. Sometimes they slip away from grammar because it makes a stronger point. And the reason people listen to preachers is because of how they feel and what that message is. The message of music is never the circle of fifths. The message of music is never the third gets dropped to make sure that you can have a second seventh and the voicing is correct. That's the grammar. It matters for the structure, but it's never the point. And as arrangers, please, if you've never arranged before, if you've arranged for 20 years, it doesn't matter. Don't get lost in that. Because particularly the more theory you've had, and I graduated music conservatory, it took like 3 or 4 years for me to like completely flush from my brain all of this graduate theory stuff that I had, because I thought that was the point. Well, like, that made it better. Complexity doesn't make it better. Those of you who've arranged before, you wanted exercise on muscle, you're like, well, I haven't been challenged in a while. Arrange a song entirely with triads. Arrange a song entirely with 3 chords. Right? And you think it's not going to be interesting? Like, some of you are aghast. You're like, oh. Arrange a song that makes somebody in the audience cry for 12 seconds. There it is. There it is. Because the human voice has that ability. You can't do that with instruments as easily. You can make someone laugh, cry so quickly, so powerfully. Start with a drone of an open fifth and have someone singing over it. Powerful. But then, I'm going around the circle of fifths and nobody can do it. Like, that's not again, that word is a boo-boo, someone go to boo-boo. I'm not saying that you can't have emotion in that kind of music. But I'm saying that those circle of fifths are never the point. And sometimes it's a lot harder to make it happen that way. So make sure that the choices that you're making are based upon what's going to take these people and connect them to those people. Right, Tom? Right. Yes.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Exactly. So once your baseline's all written out, this is when we get to step number 8. And step number 8, you can be like, wait, we're skipping over step number 8. There's so much to be done there. That's when you write out the other voices. And you could have 12 people, like lots of layers of harmony, 12-part arrangement. This could be just filling in the other 2 parts. Your tenor line, if it's the barbershop style, which, as I said, your ear gravitates to the top note. So you kind of need to make sure that has some kind of a melodic shape to it, or there's a form. And then your baritone part, where you get all the garbage notes, right?
Yes.
And you're singing the notes are going, the notes are going, right? And that was one of the easier parts.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, can we talk about the berries? Why is the grief like the berries are the stupid ones? The berries are smarter than the other people.
Oh, yeah.
I see this as a lead.
In VHS,
I would jump around and sing all the garbage notes, but no. Like, it's a baritone plus, you're like, well, I have to be quiet here, and well, the tenor's going a little sharp there, so we have to follow them, and right, baritone?
yes.
Totally.
And the only problem is
Oh, the men do it, you guys.
we don't say that. Yeah.
The stupid ones, yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
She can speak with the Australian accent. You can get her with anything, right?
Right?
I had like Siri and like the directions set to female Australian voice. Because if it's American voice, it's boring, and if it's the British voice, you feel like you're always doing something wrong. You're like, but with the Australian voice, you're like, no, I'm not going to turn here. Like you can just have the conversation with yourself. That's what I need more of in my life. You're going to dictate my. Okay, so all of the rest of the stuff, all the music theory, all the filling in, this happens now. But the beautiful thing is if you've got your form laid out, you've got your melody in, you've got your bass part in, you know what you want to do, this is when you get to kind of be creative. And you don't want to start with measure 1, you're like, I don't know what to do with the intro. Write the intro last. Start with the chorus. Start halfway through the chorus. It doesn't matter, you've got it all laid out there, right? Answer the questions that you know you can answer, and then do the rest. Do you guys know those logic puzzles that maybe you did when you were a kid or whatever? I used to love these things because I'm total. But like Ginny was born on a Wednesday and Rob's wearing a blue hat. So what did Patricia have for lunch yesterday? I know when I saw this, I was like, it's so good. Yes, she had hot dogs.
Because I'm so nerdy. But that's what arranging often is like, because if you've led with your emotion, and you've put all these pieces in, and you've chosen a song, and you've got your tempo, and you've got your key, and you've got your style, and you've got all this stuff worked out, literally these last parts, you're like, who's on the third of the chord? What's missing in this chord? That's good. Ooh, let me change the bass note here, and we can put in a track one substitution, and if you don't know what a track one substitution is, it doesn't matter, you don't have to put it in. Like I said, try it. That's what really matters. But this is where you get to kind of have fun and play around with things. Make sense?
Yeah.
And you can also play with different syllables and background parts, and here's what I recommend to you guys as arrangers. I like to push myself when I arrange, particularly if I'm going to be working with a group, and I like to come up with like, here's this crazy thing I'm going to try. Maybe because I'm a trying crazy things kind of guy, as evidenced in the previous talk. But maybe it'll be putting a syllable that no one's used before, or that I wonder if it's going to work, or I'll come up with some kind of a texture in the background. If you're going to do that, have a backup plan. So you bring it into your group, or you can go at the top of rehearsal and just bring a couple measures like, can you guys sing this? And let's see, does that sound cool? Okay, this works, but it's a little high for the tenor up on the top. Got it. Okay, good, then you can go back and do it, right? You don't have to bring the final thing in for everybody to work on at once. And then, if you do bring it in and it's not working, you wanted to try some synthesizer sound, but it doesn't work with everybody doing it, just change it to like, right? Like, you can have that fallback position, which allows you to then take bigger risks and try crazy stuff. Because here's the thing, with the history of vocal music, from almost all of human history, we've had the melody sung by a person standing in the front, maybe some other singer singing ooh and ah and lyrics. And then we've created all kinds of crazy instruments and come up with all kinds of different sounds. But the human voice is the most versatile of all the instruments. And also, it's the only one that can make you laugh or cry within 3 seconds, like I do. So the vocal techniques of being able to create and sing all these and sound like instruments, or sound like things that people have never heard before, that's really new territory. And it's really fun to be able to explore and come up with different things and sounds that haven't been done. Timbres, right? Shapes and whatever. And yes, okay, so technically, a powerful synthesizer can make a wider range of sounds, but that's the only thing. Listen to synthesizer. We got the upper hand emotionally, which is all that matters, right, Tom? All right. So now, when we're getting to step number 9, and we have
11 minutes.
we have a little more time, because I want to make sure we get some questions in. Step number 9 is to put in the final touches. Go back through your arrangement. And I want to make sure that you guys look at things, particularly when you're coming at it from a straight out perspective, you're thinking this way all the time. Vertically, chord, is this chord right, is this chord right, is this chord right, is this chord right. But go through it this way and hear it all, because we are monophonic instruments. We are like violins and oboes or whatever. Each person's voice should have a thing that's fun to sing. And if you're going to arrange something in contemporary a cappella style, for instance, sometimes people really use the voices as instruments, and then all of a sudden, you've got your altos going like this, and you sing the same thing, and they've got 8 measures of that, and you know they're just going to check out, which is going to undermine the potential for the emotion. So maybe you have them swap back and forth between alto and tenor, and they do this, and then they go back to this part. Like, if you're not arranging specifically within barbershop folk harmony, and also make sure it's singable. Sometimes, not the baritone part, we know that that's not singable. The other parts, like make sure that you really get a sense of the flow, and also don't forget to put in breaths. So you breathe. What? Okay, I'll be honest, I never do, but I think it's good for me to teach the process, because somebody should be doing it, because somebody needs to breathe occasionally. Not virgins. Everybody else. You guys don't. You can breathe in March. So once you've gotten through that, you've put in all the little final steps and all the final touches. Step number 10 of this whole process is to be there at rehearsal. When the song is being learned, just like a tailor will come in and take a sleeve and try it on or whatever, you should be in there and listen and like, ooh, that valve's too bright, let's pull this back here, let's change this little section, you know what I mean? And you can make little adjustments on the fly, potentially, or the director may say like, this isn't working for us, we want to kind of go in this direction. And as arrangers, it's not your way or the highway. Like, you also need to get used to that process of letting the director be in charge and change the nature of what's going on or whatever, because ultimately it's you have to give your baby over to the group, and the group has to feel good about it. Also, there are going to be times when there's a change to you, it makes no difference, or it makes it not quite as good, but if it helps the group really feel like it's their arrangement and they're happier singing it, then they're going to be more emotionally engaged. Then they're going to, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If you're the one delivering the speech, you need to make sure the words fit in your mouth correctly. And that's what part of this whole process is. That's a part of the custom tailoring. And sometimes there's a back and forth that happens. You bring it to rehearsal, they sing it, go, can you fix the bridge? It's just totally not working. Go back, noodle, bring in 2 different options for them. Okay, this one's working better, great, and it all fits together. You probably don't think, particularly if you haven't arranged much before, you probably don't think that that's an important part of it, but there's no reason, just the same way a speech can go through multiple versions and iterations. When you're writing a book, there are tons of different chapters and changes and all this kind of stuff that you want to make sure gets it just right. So as an arranger, you don't have to have it perfect right out of the gate, and more importantly, you won't know until it's in their voices what works best. Yeah.
I'm working on an arrangement right now, and earlier this week I had the experience of working through some of it with a director, a Master 700 director in our organization, and it was great hearing her perspective of, I don't think that's going to sing well. I don't think that embellishment is very, very interesting, and
Right.
So they can be a part of the creative process too, and that can be really fun.
And they should.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a great thing. If you're not as experienced an arranger, it's good for you to get as much feedback as you can. And also, you're going to get different ideas and different conflicting ideas from different people. Even within a group. No, this should be ooh, no, it should be ah. Because people are stupid. But the more you arrange, the more you'll learn that. It's fun. It's great. Also, everyone's an expert. You'll learn that.
Oh, yeah.
How do you get started with vocal percussion?
Well, the first thing to know about vocal percussion is, like I said in my speech, like it wasn't like, let's have people just drum so that, it's a part that's integrated into arrangements because you want that rhythmic underpinning. And sometimes you can put it into the actual notes. So for instance, instead of having the bass go, you could have them go, like there are ways that you can take harder consonants and things and weave percussive parts into harmonies. But ultimately, having a separate person who's a vocal percussionist or getting some people in your choir too, the best place to start is online. I worked with Google to create a website, acapella.how, H-O-W, and that has an entire section on vocal instrumental sounds, many of the videos I did myself, and then lots of really great beatboxers are up there. I mean, there are tons of beatboxers, and here's how to make a really good snare sound, and here's how to make a really good hi-hat, and here's et cetera, et cetera. But basically, starting vocal percussion, you only need 3 sounds. You need a hi-hat, you need a kick, and then you need a snare, which either can be like a side stick, or like, the full snare. And when you hear people say things like boots and cats, some really simple things can happen. And if you're doing a jazz tune, it may be as simple as having somebody just go along with it, which adds this other little sound and flavor. But bottom line, it's not like you go from no vocal percussion to I'm unbelievable. You can have a couple people, and you can even have it split up between a couple people. So one person's doing, and another person doing. So together, but they can't do it individually. It's that kind of a thing. It's actually not that hard. But the other thing to know is you don't need to sound as much like the drums as you do need to keep a steady beat. So people can't really tell if things are out of tune. I know that goes against everything that barbershop has been based on for the past 60 years. But people really, tuning is not the point of music. And more importantly, our ears and the fact that tuning is compromised in the Western system, there's a pretty decent bandwidth that people are comfortable with. And if you listen to Motown, it's out of tune by today's standards, right? Hugely in some cases, but it's still perfect. However, rhythm is something that you don't have much fudge factor on because we all have steady heartbeats, we all walk in rhythm, we're used to hearing clocks tick. So that really steady rhythm, if it changes, even like a boy raised by wolves can tell that that's off, whereas seriously. And I also know that a lot of the barbershop style is all about pushing and pulling. You get this kind of orchestral rubato going in. Right? But when you get a pop song going, the group has to stay steady. So practice with a metronome. Make sure any early vocal percussionists are favoring steady time over exact precise sounds. And don't be afraid to leave out beats or have breaths going in there. You know, like put breaths into it. And you can breathe in on sound as opposed to breathing out. You can breathe in on going in as opposed to out. Like there are all kinds of different ways that breath sounds can become part of the pattern. And so we have time for a couple more. So basically that's the method. And then once you're done, step 10, lather, rinse, repeat. Go back and take what you've learned and jump into another arrangement. But here's the last thing for those of you who haven't arranged before. It's not hard to get started, it's hard to finish. And Picasso said, like, the mark of a great artist is to know when they're done with painting. If you're not sure, wrap it up. Bring it into your group. Mostly done, mostly finished, mostly perfect, and sung is a lot better than incredibly precise and everything was just the way I want. Because, like I said, the music, the notes on the page don't matter. The singing matters. So a completed arrangement exists, and an uncompleted arrangement, it's binary. Either it's 1 or it's 0. 95% is still 0. Or an arrangement you finish and no one's ever sung, still a 0. Sung by group, you get the big point. So get them across the line and get them sung by group so that then you have something, you learn from it, and then you start to build up momentum, and then you get less writer's block, you get less precious about the whole process. And don't expect everything to be genius, and don't think that everything needs to be genius. Think about Elton John. That man has written more bad songs in his lifetime than, no, terrible songs. But he's written so many songs, and some of them are awesome. And nobody thinks of Elton John like, well, pound for pound, he's a pretty mediocre songwriter. Who says that? Nobody thinks that way. Like Elton John, he's a living legend. He's done all this different stuff, right? So the more you arrange, the more great stuff you have, and then that is where you start going, and you get better with time and repetition as well, right? Yes. We have 1 minute for questions. Yay!
Make it good.
Nailed it. Anybody? Any questions about any of this? If questions do come up later on, of course, feel free to bounce questions around. And then also there's a whole Arrangers, Barbershop Sweet Adelines Arrangers forum too. So what do you guys think? Do you like these courses? Like, pull people in for your
there's a lot of, we do a lot of chord structure. Yeah. And now we're sort of thinking outside of the box a little bit more and bringing in the, you know, the 9ths and 11ths, the 6th, the major 7th, those kinds of things. Lots of times you're faced with, that's kind of a bunch of notes together. What chord is it? Yep. You know, and then the other thing is, a semitone apart, singing with semitones apart, to me just sounds, it's off. When you have chords, for instance, a major 7th, you have those two. Yeah, don't ever put them together, because it just sounds like a horn, kind of thing. So I've had to talk to people about, well, why can't I put things a semitone apart? So, you know, they ask me, and it doesn't sound good. You know?
Totally, and often it doesn't sound good, except then when somebody does it and it sounds good, it's cool. So it's like you're right. It's problematic. It's challenging, and it's not always what the doctor ordered. Occasionally it is. It's like that spice in your spice rack you almost never use, except occasionally. Like, how often use dill? Like, I don't use dill. So, like, when you can use dill, but if you're making borscht, you've got salmon, you're like, ooh, I need dill. So it's like that. You're like, don't use it unless you need it, and then those couple times you may have this like wonderful shimmering thing. I mean, in Nightingale Singing in Martha Square by Gene Hurling, there's a moment at the end of the first line on the square, they're just singing it open fourth. And you're like, when would you, like, if you got a list of things don't ever do, don't have people sing it open fourth. Like, why would you do that? If you've got 4-part harmony, it breaks every rule, and it's ugly, and it's not full, except where it says different. So I wouldn't take it out of your kit, I would just put it on the list of like, use with extreme caution, how about the scone across my Makes sense?
Did you recommend a program for our computers, PC or Apple?
I'm using notation program?
Yeah.
So there are a couple, the two big ones, your Coke and Pepsi, are going to be Finale or Sibelius.
What was the second one?
Sibelius. And some people have strong feelings about what you use. I don't really care. Basically, Finale is more standard in the US, and Sibelius is more European, but there are people in the US who use Sibelius, and there's some of them who use Finale, blah, blah, blah. Plus, there are tools like Music Notes, which is pretty much entirely online, and some younger arrangers are liking that. And in the Finale family, also, there are different levels of it. So Notepad is free, and then there's less, so you can work your way up a food chain rather than buying, like, because full Finale will just terrify you. You don't have to start there. But when you know, upgrade, because Finale's for like publishing, but then, you know, they've got different layers. What's that? Muse Store, yeah. That's the thing, you don't need to necessarily get stuck with one in general. But I do recommend one that will allow you to import MIDI files, because it will save you crazy amounts of time. Yeah, one last question, and then I think we're...
Finale does allow you to share with more Sweet Adeline and Barbershop.
Yeah, Finale is the American standard. And some people say that Sibelius has an easier, like, on-ramping curve. Yes. But then Finale is, once you get into the real power stuff, is more, at least it was, more beneficial for publishing and stuff like that. Either way, I will say Finale has the different levels, including Finale Notepad, which is free. So everyone in your group could download, open your arrangement, play along, and listen and see the notes going by and stuff. Like, there are nice options there as well. So they work. Okay, quick,
I think one of the good options too with Finale is it has a barbershop female, barbershop male template. So you're not.
Yeah, the templates are really useful.
The templates are make it very easy.
Well, I'm a Finale user, so I'm all about it. So I would say you can dive in there and look around, and you can also noodle with a couple of them. They probably have 30-day free trial, etc. But I'd start with you don't need the full Finale. You know, buy the $79 rather than the $500, and that'll give you 85% of what full Finale does. But you don't need to worry about letter kerning and the note head changing to an X. Like, you don't need that. Awesome. I hope it's been helpful, guys.